Hello, everyone. I'm Keith Pijanowski. I'm a AI solutions engineer here at MinIO. And in case you're not familiar with MinIO, we are a high performance object store for AI workloads. We're often used as a data lake, but if you've been following the big data current events, then you know that we're also can be the backup for a data lake house, which is one part data lake and one part data warehouse, meaning we can also be used to store your structured data. So today we're going to talk about mobile testing, but not just the creation of test scripts. We're going to really get into it. We want to talk about automation. We want to talk about the CI/CD pipeline, the data generated, and how AI can help. And today I'm joined by Frank Moyer and Stu Hume from Kobiton. Frank and Stu, could you take a moment to introduce yourselves and what your company does?
Sure. My name is Frank Moyer. I'm the Chief Technology Officer at Kobiton. And Kobiton is a mobile testing platform that allows our customers like Bank of America and Uber to perform manual and automated testing on real mobile devices from anywhere around the world. We are deployed both in the cloud and on premises, and we partner very well with MinIO in order to provide our AI based on premises solution.
Hi, I'm Stu Hume. I've been at Kobiton for about 19 months. I'm the VP of Product Engineering and Product Operations. So very much concerned with high-performance systems in different types of deployment models, bringing the product vision to life, and responsible for all of the underlying technology, operations, and performance. And excited to see how MinIO has really benefited us and moved us forward into the next level of high-performance systems.
Excellent. Now, before we actually get into it, I feel like there's something I got to tell you about myself, maybe sort of a confession. But about 10 years ago, I worked for 3 years, I worked on the now defunct Windows Phone platform. So yeah, I've recovered since then. But the reason I bring that up is because I was working more on the customer side of things. And what was interesting back then, and remember, this was going back 10, 12 years, was that oftentimes I would meet with big brands that I was trying to talk into building an app for our platform. And I'd walk in to meet folks, and there would always be in the middle of the engineering section a big table with every device on the planet on the table. And when I first saw this, I remember saying something like, wow, that's a really interesting thing to do to kind of motivate your engineers and nice little display. And the answer I got back was, no, that's where we do our testing. So that again, that was 10 years ago. Fast forward to the year 2024, and now there's companies like Kobiton. So tell us a little bit about what testing looks like using your product.
Sure. So it's a great story, Keith. And when you rewind, and there's a great LinkedIn post from one of our customers at Uber that shows their device lab maybe 6 years ago, which was a handful of devices, very much like what you saw when you went to your customers' offices back then. And now it's scaled out to thousands. Also on that same LinkedIn post, you can see their device lab with thousands of devices running all different versions of operating systems, mobile devices, different manufacturers from everywhere around the world. And Kobiton allows our customers to remotely access those devices with millisecond latency. So from when a user launches that device in a couple of seconds, every single action they perform, they're able to interact with it as close to as a device in hand experience as you can get. And when you've got hundreds and hundreds of testers that are trying to get through thousands of test scripts, whether it's manual or automation, speed is an imperative.
And Stu, you have anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, no, I think that there's something that I often talk about in the world of app testing and testing in general is that, as a software engineer in my background, one of the greatest fears of engineers was to catch what I call the testing bug and forever be labeled as a tester. And in the last 3 to 5 years, I would say that has really shifted. And the concept of application testing, automation, or rigorous repeatable testing has become so much more critical that it's actually starting to emerge as a true engineering field in its own right.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I think if you want to make quality software today, it's not uncommon for a repo to have more source code that's the actual unit test and end-to-end test than the actual product itself. So yeah, I agree. It's become a real engineering practice. But I really want to really emphasize. I think most people take mobile apps for granted. How hard it is to produce quality code. And if you're an engineer and you write microservices, you have it easy. You get to write, your code runs on a container, which is perfectly contained, a single operating system. But when you write a mobile app, you want to be on all the platforms. You got different operating systems, which have different versions. You got different form factors. You got different devices, and devices have different versions. And it's just a lot more moving parts. So I wanted to, with kind of that behind us, I want to talk a little bit about when we want to talk about the CI/CD pipeline. So how do you guys fit into the CI/CD pipeline and DevOps, et cetera, all that good stuff?
Yeah, great question. It's an emerging field. If we take a step back and look at automation, it's not automating individual parts like the test execution or the unit test execution or even the code. It's become a continuous process from code commit, code test, code merge, and then code release. And as we move more and more into automation of quality, and it's not just functional quality now, it's performance quality, security. There's a lot of other different aspects that have to be tested. So what we found is that more and more companies are now understanding that test automation and test execution and test platforms are actually infrastructure. And in the same way that people look at networking, mature and cutting edge companies are now looking at their mobile app testing infrastructure as part of their core infrastructure that's a center of excellence. And so what we're finding is it's not just a product that's, bought and purchased or used by a quality assurance member or team member or a director of engineering. It's actually becoming a field that's integrated into the full software development lifecycle. And tests are being executed, at commit, at merge, and obviously through regression to deployment. And it's done frequently and continuously. So rather than becoming sort of this add-on at the end of the SDLC, it's a core integration part of it.
Oh, that's interesting. So because I know in previous lives, testing was an afterthought. You'd get most of your application built, and then you'd go shopping for a testing tool. So you're saying the industry's kind of growing up, and that's a core part of the infrastructure that you kind of get in place before you even write a single line of code.
If you take a step back and look at what happens when testing is not available, once upon a time it was kind of like, we'll wing it, it might be okay, as long as we can get the basics done with somebody on their desk. Now it's become a true, if we can't test this thoroughly across a table full of devices, or a cart full of devices, as we say, then the release doesn't happen. And so there is a much more significant impact to businesses when their infrastructure around testing fails. And that's where Kobiton really steps up and fills that gap.
Yeah, and to just tag on to what Stu said, there's a really interesting balance that's playing out right now between real devices and emulators and simulators when it comes to testing. If you rewind to when I first started 6 years at Kobiton, we were very much about real devices it's the only way to go. But we realized that there's real value in testing on emulators and simulators in that continuous testing process. So while it's an imperative to test on real devices before you go live into production, there's still a lot of value that can be gleaned from testing as part of that continuous testing process.
How do you actually test on a real device when you're in like maybe a CI/CD pipeline? Is that possible?
Yes. So when the specific flow that our customers execute, when the code is merged, they will create a build, an APK or an IPA file for Android or iOS respectively. And then they upload those to our application repository through an API call. That's the first step. And we have some great integrations with Jenkins, Circle CI, Bitrise is prominent in mobile. And when that gets uploaded, the next step in the process is to kick off your automation suite. Our customers use a variety of automation frameworks. Appium is the most popular because it supports both Android and iOS. But many of our customers also use XUI Test, which is the native iOS framework. and Espresso, which is the native Android framework. So once that gets executed, they can then check the test results, calling Kobiton's APIs to get the results, but also looking at the execution results of their scripts, and then determine whether or not to move forward into the next step in the CI/CD process.
So that replaces that big table that I was talking about earlier.
Well, that table still exists. It looks different.
Okay.
It looks, in Kobiton's world, and Stu can expand upon this, but we have a cart that gets deployed on premises for many of our customers if they want to do it that way. We can also host those devices ourselves, in which case those are racked in our data center.
Oh, okay, interesting. And real quick, what is the difference between an emulator and a simulator? I was just really curious about that when I was going over your documentation.
Yeah, so Android uses the word emulator and iOS uses the word simulator. It's mostly because we work with other partners that get closer to the likeness of a real device that we'll be launching in the next in 2025. But that's really the distinction we draw.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Stu, did you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I think just coming back, your original question about CI/CD, I think one of the things that's really important to recognize is the sort of the testing infrastructure world and the test execution and automation world matures is that being able to test in a situation that mirrors the real world environment that your end users are operating in is probably the most critical part of this. There's a lot of benefits to being able to try different devices, different operating system combinations, to try and identify as closely and as quickly as possible what the actual real world performance is on a continuous basis. Traditionally, that's just been done, as I think you said earlier, at the end of development. Oh, we better test this. We better have a look at what it's like. Now that whole thing is integrated into the CI/CD pipeline, and the ability to test on, hundreds of different combinations of device and operating system is giving enterprises a lot more reassurance and a lot more security that what they're releasing is stable.
Oh, okay, really, really cool. I'm going to kind of change topics slightly. I came across this term on one of your white papers, the concept of device exhaust. And I think that's an awesome metaphor for data. Could you go into more details on what exactly device exhaust is?
Yeah, so it's device exhaust is what we refer to as all of the data that comes off of the device that's emitted by the device during a test. That includes screenshots, logs, system metrics, the XML that renders on the device when it displays the screen, video, the health of the device, all make up what is the device exhaust. And what one of Kobiton's differentiators is our ability to extract that exhaust very efficiently. All of that exhaust is used to train and run inference on our machine learning models. All of that exhaust is actually sent to MinIO's object repository to store so that we can run those training models and run those inference engines.
That really just shows how mobile testing has changed over the years. And for our audience, I want to just read these off one by one, all the things that get collected. You said them all, but I just want to go over it one more time. So device exhaust. So imagine a test, a mobile test being conducted. And for that test, you get the test steps with the details in XML. You get screenshots, video capture at 30 frames per second, device logs, system metrics, network payloads, and health statistics of the device. So I honestly, in my mobile days, I never worked with a tool like that. But imagine all that data that has to go somewhere, and I guess that's where we get to MinIO.
Exactly.
All that data goes into MinIO, and you can imagine, do you have any stats on how big that can get for a single app?
We'll just say that we are going to be increasing our purchase of MinIO over the next 12 months.
Yeah. And as you were developing your product, did you just know you needed MinIO? Did you try any other products? Like, how did you land on MinIO for storing a device exhaust?
That's a great question. I would call it's one of those times in technology development where you find something that's a perfect fit for what you're looking for. And I guess let me start with the problems that we had. It was driven by our different deployment models. So we have a combination of different ways that customers adopt our system. Sometimes it's fully in the cloud, running out of our data center. And at the other end of the spectrum, it's fully contained inside basically a rack running on their data center or in their premises. And what we found is we were very heavily involved with AWS service adoption. And obviously one of those was S3. And then in the cloud, that was fine. That's where we sort of engineered the first version of the product, and we took advantage of a lot of the S3 interfaces and methodologies and frameworks and paradigms for shifting and managing data. When we came to on-premise, we rapidly realized that, well, guess what? We didn't have that. And the second one is that, it's a lot harder to engineer performance systems when you're also responsible from everything from the bare metal up. When it's abstracted away behind the cloud providers, it can be a lot easier. And so we really set out to look for something that was a more common interface with the way in framework and paradigm that we're working with S3 with, as well as looking for highly performant, scalable, extensible, and fault tolerant. And I have to say, when we set out that problem criteria and sort of started looking for solutions to adopt inside our on-prem solutions, I didn't really have much hope. And then MinIO, we discovered MinIO, and it basically, I couldn't have described a more accurate picture for them to solve, and that they had a real good, solid track record in solving. So that was the problem. When we started looking deeper into MinIO, I think the main things that really stood out for it was the fault tolerance and performance. And when I say that, it was we could extend or expand the storage capacity at no adverse impact to performance. It was incredibly fault tolerant to a degree beyond what we expected to get with RAID. We did compare it with a lot of hardware-driven solutions, and certainly, you abstract away things through network, NFS, and different types of network storage. Well, that just wasn't available to us. So we were really left with choosing between hardware management solutions for storage or MinIO. And I don't think there was really any doubt which way we would end up going, and we did. And it's probably been the most fault-tolerant, reliable parts of the system that we've had. I think if I look back over the last couple of years at all the different issues I've had to resolve, not once have I had to resolve an issue related to MinIO. It just works.
Oh, that's great to hear. I want to move on. So whenever you have data like what you guys collect, that kind of begs the question: how can you use AI? And I know that you guys have done a lot of work with trying to improve testing with artificial intelligence. Can we talk a little bit about your use of AI?
Sure. So we set out on this journey to help our testers improve their efficiency back in 2021. So before the explosion of generative AI that we hit about 24 months ago. And when we set out on that journey, it was, how do we help manual testers get to automation? And then how do we help automation engineers make their job better? So those were really the two premises we set out to do. And on the helping the manual tester get to automation, we have some great case studies now where using our scriptless automation, a manual tester can run a manual test on a Galaxy S21 or any other device type. And then our scriptless automation will run those same test steps across a multitude of other devices without knowing anything about automation scripting. We are the only product in the industry that provides the ability to take a manual test and turn that into no-code automation.
Okay.
On the other side, if you want to accelerate and you want more control over your automation, we have a product called it's an open source Appium script generator. So that same script that you ran as scriptless, you can actually generate an Appium script from a manual test in Java, C#, Node.js, and that's an open source project. So you can go out and make modifications if you want to make any customizations for yourself. And then all of that is driven off of using deep learning models. And then helping the automation engineer do their job better, we have a self-healing capability, and we're the only ones in the market who have mobile self-healing. So when a script fails because the developer changed something in their app, instead of the script failing, we use AI to autocorrect and figure out the best matching element so that the script does not fail.
Oh, that's interesting. I want to go. I want to go back to that, man. So it sounds like what you're doing is building kind of like a co-pilot for writing mobile tests. Would that be an accurate statement?
We use deep learning to help testers do their job more efficiently.
Right. Because I know sometimes writing mobile tests can be a little bit nuanced. It's it's not like
Oh,
your traditional mobile
yeah.
platform. It can be a little bit tricky to get everything correct. So having a co-pilot would be great. The other thing that caught my eye is that you do. It looks like you do image recognition for UI testing, and I know you have to double check that the UI is getting rendered correctly. So having like artificial intelligence to look for defects in UI testing, that's pretty slick. Can you elaborate on that?
Sure. We use deep learning models to identify inadvertent changes to the UI. So, if you take a screenshot of a device, the time on the device is likely going to be different than when you ran it originally. So, being smart about the diffs is really important so you don't have a lot of annoying false negatives. We also have a partner, Applitools, who is leading the market in visual testing and leveraging our device exhaust. They are able to take our device exhaust and run their algorithms as well to do visual testing. So we have multiple ways to either both through partners and through our own developed AI models to satisfy that business need.
Stu, do you have anything you wanted to add about just the AI offerings of Kobiton?
No, I think that really sums it up. I think perhaps if I could mention just a couple of the benefits from the engineering perspective as well, is that one of the biggest challenges that I think AI really has a massive impact on is, coming back to your CI/CD integration, is the amount of time that test engineers and engineers themselves put into resolving issues is really dramatically reduced when our system removes what I would call falsely identifies failing tests. And, it's the leveraging of AI and the Kobiton platform across multiple devices, which has a massive efficiency impact purely by stopping people from having to waste time resolving issues that aren't really issues.
That's great. So one last question, and we'll wrap up. What does the future hold for Kobiton? Like, what is your vision? Any new capabilities that you are bringing to market?
Yeah, so we are right now, from an AI perspective, leading the market for mobile testing, and we are continuing to advance our capabilities. The AI gateway that we announced a few weeks ago allows any partner to build their own AI models, whether those are third parties like Applitools, AppDome, accessibility testing platforms like DeQ and Evinced, to pull the device exhaust to run their own algorithms, their own generative AI for a variety of purposes to help the testers be more efficient. So we'll continue to expand on that AI gateway. We are also advancing the generation process where instead of just generating the Appium script or the scriptless automation from a manual test, being to shift that further and earlier in the SDLC process. So giving that power to non-technical and non-testing people. So we'll continue to use and leverage artificial intelligence and harvest the device exhaust to have a differentiated product in the industry. Our goal is to get to 1 hour continuous testing. And if you were to ask any web developer, web tester, hey, would you be able to get to 1 hour continuous testing? It would be like, yeah, sure, that's not a problem. I can scale that quite easily. When it comes to mobile and all the difficulties, complexities, and nastiness of mobile, we're able to do things that nobody else in the industry can do. And that will enable us to get to and enable the market to get to 1 hour continuous testing.
Wow, that's great. Well, we're at the end of our time. I want to thank Frank and Stu for joining me today.
Yeah. To learn more about Kobiton and to accelerate your path to automation, visit Kobiton.com.
And to learn more about MinIO, check out our blog site. That's blog.min.io.
Thank you very much, Keith.
Thanks, Keith. It's really enjoyed it. Thank you.